Welcome to Speak English Podcast with Rory and Alex.
Okay, picture this. It's Monday morning, maybe 9 a.m. You're standing there waiting for the elevator or, hovering by the coffee machine. A colleague walks up, makes eye contact, and drops the inevitable bomb. How was your weekend?
The universal social script. It arrives like clockwork.
It really does. And in theory, this should be the easiest question in the world. I mean, you literally just lived it. You were there.
But for so many people, and this isn't just for English learners, even native speakers had this moment of complete system failure.
Oh, I know it well.
We actually have a term for it in the material we're looking at today. It's called the Monday morning freeze.
A freeze, yes.
It's a fascinating cognitive, well, not a failure, but a glitch. You've had 48 hours of experiences, meals, walks, Netflix, whatever. But when you're put on the spot, your brain just goes blank. It's like, I did nothing. I ceased to exist for 2 days.
And then because you're panicking, you just default to the robot answer. You kind of mumble, it was good, and then you just scare at your shoes.
Exactly. And that moment right there is what we are going to dismantle today. We have combed through a whole stack of sources, communication guides, linguistic research, social psychology papers to solve this specific problem.
So our mission for this deep dive isn't just about grammar.
No, not at all. It's to give you a strategy to survive and actually, enjoy that Monday morning small talk.
Because the sources are pretty clear about this. Answering that question isn't just being polite, it's actually a trap.
It is absolutely a trap. The literature calls it the one-sentence answer trap.
A one-sentence trap.
And it is identified as the #1 conversation killer in office environments.
Okay, so walk us through the anatomy of this trap. How can one simple sentence just kill a whole conversation?
Okay, so think of it like we're playing tennis. I serve the ball to you by asking, how was your weekend? That's the serve.
Okay, I'm with you.
If you reply with just, it was good, or, I went to the beach, and then you stop talking, you've basically caught the ball, put it in your pocket.
And walked off the court.
Immediately. The game just stops. You have given me zero information to work with. There is no hook, no detail, no emotion.
Right. So now the burden is entirely back on me, the person who asked, to either restart the whole thing or just walk away awkwardly.
And that creates that painful silence we all hate. The elevator ride feels 10 times longer. So the core insight from our deep dive today is that small talk is a game of volleys. Your job is to get the ball back over the net.
I love that visualization. But, getting the ball back over the net can feel like a lot of work when you're tired and you haven't had your coffee yet.
It can, and that's why the sources suggest starting with the absolute lowest barrier to entry. Before we even get to the fancy formulas, there's just the one extra sentence rule.
Okay, I like this. It sounds like something I can do even if I'm half asleep.
That's the point. The rule is simple. You can use your boring starter. You can say, it was nice. But you are then obligated to add one more sentence of information.
Just one.
Just one. So instead of, it was nice, period, you say, it was nice, I finally watched that new superhero movie.
I see the difference instantly. By adding, I watched the movie, you've given me a target, I can ask, oh, was it any good? Or, I heard that was terrible.
Precisely, you've opened a door. If you just say, it was nice, the door is locked. But the sources go much deeper. If you want to move from just surviving to actually mastering it, to being that person people love talking to, there's a specific algorithm.
I saw this in the notes, the 3-step formula. It almost looks like a math equation for social skills.
It really is. And the beauty of it is that it works for almost any scenario. The formula is, step 1, the activity, what you did. Step 2, the detail, a specific piece of context. And step 3, the feeling, how you experienced it.
Activity, detail, feeling. Okay, let's break that down because I think most people stop at step 1 and think they're done.
Most people do. They say, I went hiking. That's step 1. It's a fact. But facts are dry. Facts are for police reports, not coffee breaks.
I went hiking. True, but boring. So how do we humanize it?
You add step 2, the detail. I went hiking in the Blue Mountains. Okay, better. We have a setting. I can picture mountains. But the magic, the real connection happens at step 3, the feeling. It was so peaceful to be out of the city.
Okay, let's put it all together. I went hiking in the Blue Mountains, and it was so peaceful to be out of the city.
Feel the difference.
It's a completely different statement. It invites empathy. I can relate to wanting peace. I can relate to wanting to escape the city noise. Suddenly, I know something about you as a person, not just, where your body was on Saturday.
And that is the psychological key here. The sources all emphasize that sharing the emotion, the how you felt, is what builds the bridge. We don't bond over facts, we bond over shared feelings.
Let's look at some of the examples in the text because I want to see how this applies to different kinds of weekends. What about, say, the food example? Everyone loves talking about food, but I ate dinner is a terrible story.
Right, so the robot answer is, I went to a restaurant.
Boring. 0 points.
Applying the formula. Step 1, activity. I went to that new Italian place downtown. Step 2, detail. I had the carbonara. And step 3, feeling. It was actually kind of disappointing. It was way too salty.
Oh, I love that. A negative feeling.
Yes. A negative feeling is just as good for connection, maybe even better.
Because now we have a little drama, little conflict.
Exactly. Now we can complain together. I can say, oh, no, really, I was going to go there. Thanks for the warning. Now we're in a real conversation.
That's a great point. The feeling step doesn't have to be, it was magical. It can be, it was exhausting or it was frustrating. Authenticity wins.
Authenticity always wins. There's another great example in the sources about the lazy weekend. This is where people feel the most shame, I think. They don't want to admit they did nothing.
Right, the pressure to be interesting. I climbed Everest sounds better than I sat on my couch.
But the formula protects you here. The example was, I stayed home all weekend. That's the activity. Detail. I finished my book, feeling it was so satisfying to just turn off my phone.
Satisfying. That one word changes I'm a lazy slob into I practiced self-care.
Exactly. You are framing your inactivity as a positive choice. You're telling me I needed this, and I, as the listener, will probably say, oh, I'm so jealous. I wish I had done that. I was just running around all weekend.
It really does reframe the whole narrative. Now, speaking of running around, the sources make a really interesting distinction about active weekends. We tend to use the word busy as a catch-all, but the material says there's a nuance between busy and productive.
This is a subtle but vital distinction in English. Busy implies a kind of chaos. It implies external pressure. You're reacting. Productive implies internal control. You're the one in charge.
Okay, so let's arm our listeners with the vocabulary. If I spent Saturday running errands, fighting traffic, doing all that life admin, I'm busy. What are the best phrases to convey that chaotic energy?
The most common idiomatic expression, and you'll hear this constantly, is, I was running around all weekend.
Running around.
You aren't literally running, usually, but it paints this picture of frantic movement, store to store, task to task.
It sounds exhausting just hearing it.
Another strong one is, I had a lot on my plate.
That's a classic.
It means you were just overwhelmed with responsibilities. And if it was really intense, you can use the dramatic phrase, I barely had time to breathe.
I barely had time to breathe. We've all been there. And that invites sympathy, right?
It does. It signals, I survived, but barely. It invites the listener to say, oh, wow, you need a coffee.
Now, contrast that with the productive weekend.
Right. If you say, it was productive, the sources warn us, you must follow the rule of context. You cannot just say, it was productive and then stop. You have to prove it.
You need the receipts.
Exactly. So you say, it was productive. I finally cleaned the garage and did my taxes.
Ah, it's that feeling of checking boxes.
It's a very different vibe from running around. It's satisfying. You accomplished something.
I want to circle back to the lazy weekend for a second, because the sources offered some slang, some casual phrasing that I think is really useful for sounding natural. We talked about I stayed home, but there are cooler ways to say it.
Definitely. Native speakers value that low energy time. You'll hear, I took it easy.
I took it easy. Simple.
Or I just chilled. Chilled is the ultimate casual verb. It covers everything from watching TV to just, staring at the ceiling.
And there was one phrase in the text that I thought was the ultimate power move.
I did absolutely nothing, and it was great.
That is pure confidence.
It is. You aren't apologizing for your rest. You're owning it. And again, notice the feeling is attached right there. It was great.
Okay, moving into the psychology of this a bit more. We touched on details earlier, but one of the sources calls them hooks. I love this visualization.
It's a great metaphor. Think of a conversation as a rock climbing wall. If the wall is smooth glass, you can't climb it. You just slide right off.
And a generic answer like, it was good, or watched a movie, is a smooth glass wall.
Exactly. There is nothing for the listener to grab onto. Details are the handholds. They're the hooks that let the other person pull themselves up and join you.
So how do we create these hooks? Let's use the movie example.
Don't just say, I watched a movie. That's smooth glass. Say, I watched this really intense thriller on Netflix.
Okay, so thriller is a hook. Netflix is a hook.
Intense is a hook. Now I can ask so many questions. Oh, I love thrillers. What was it? Or I've been looking for something on Netflix. Is it worth watching? You've given me multiple entry points.
The sources also mention sensory details, especially with food or travel.
Yes, adjectives are your friends here. Words like fresh, spicy, crowded, loud. These sensory words create a picture in the listener's mind. The difference between I went to the market and bought this incredible homemade bread is massive.
One is a report, the other is a sensory experience.
And people remember experiences. They forget reports almost immediately.
This leads us into the mechanics section. And I know a lot of our listeners get anxiety here. They know what they want to say, but they get stuck on the grammar. They're afraid of making a mistake, so they just default to the short, safe answer.
This is the tragedy of perfectionism. But the sources have very, very good news here. For small talk, simplicity is not just acceptable, it is preferred.
You don't need to sound like a Victorian novel to tell me about your weekend?
No. In fact, if you use overly complex words, it actually creates distance. Native speakers use simple language for weekends. I had fun. I chilled. It was tiring. You don't need to say, I partook in a recreational excursion.
So you say, I went to the movies.
Exactly. However, there's one non-negotiable grammar rule. You must use the past simple tense.
Because the weekend is over. It's in the past.
Correct. We are dealing with history, so you can't say, I go to the beach or I have fun. You must say, I went. I had.
And this brings us to the big four. The sources identified 4 verbs that cover like 90% of weekend activities.
Yes. If you are feeling overwhelmed by grammar, just memorize these 4 irregular verbs. They are the workhorses of weekend stories. Go becomes went, have becomes had, see becomes saw, and do becomes did.
That's it. Just those 4.
Think about it. I went to the park, I had a burger, I saw my friends, I did some cleaning. You can tell almost any story with just those 4.
That is actually really reassuring. You don't need 1,000 verbs. You just need the big 4.
But here's the most important insight from the research on this, and I want everyone to really hear this. Progress over perfection.
I love this part of the deep dive.
The sources explicitly state, if you say, I go to the park, the world will not end. The police will not arrest you.
And importantly, the person you're talking to will understand you.
Yes. Context is king. If you smile and say, I go to the park, I know exactly what you mean. The goal of language is connection, not accuracy. Do not let the fear of a grammar mistake silence you.
A broken sentence is better than a silent elevator ride.
That should be on a t-shirt. It's the absolute truth. People value the effort of connection far more than the perfection of your verb conjugation.
Okay, let's shift to the social side before we finish up. Weekends are often about people. And there are some tricky phrasal verbs here that the sources highlight, like hanging out versus meeting up versus catching up.
These are vital nuances. Hanging out is the default. I hung out with friends. It implies unstructured time, no specific agenda.
What about grabbed, as in we grabbed coffee?
Grab is excellent. It implies spontaneity and speed. It sounds really low pressure. Let's grab lunch. Sounds much more casual than let us eat lunch together.
And then there's catch up. This is different from just meeting, right?
Yes. You can meet a stranger or a client. You catch up with someone you already know but haven't seen in a while. It implies, restoring the database. You're updating each other.
So if I saw my best friend from college, I wouldn't say I met him. I'd say I caught up with him.
Exactly. Caught up adds that layer of history and emotional connection. It tells me it was a meaningful interaction, not just a transaction.
Now, before we wrap up, we need to talk about that first adjective you use, the evaluation starter. We mentioned it was good, but the sources suggest we can be a bit more honest.
Yes. You don't have to lie. If your weekend was exhausting, just say it. A very common structure is the yes, but structure.
It was busy but good.
That is the champion of weekend answers. It acknowledges the effort, but ends on a positive note. It shows you're resilient.
Or just, it was tiring.
If you say, it was tiring, I helped my brother move house, you get immediate respect. That's a noble tiring. You're a good sibling.
What about, it was quiet? Is that code for I have no friends?
Not at all.
Yeah.
We need to break that stigma. It was quiet is a perfectly valid, positive evaluation. It just sets the expectation. Don't expect a wild story. It signals contentment. It was quiet, just what I needed.
It really seems like the theme here is, again, authenticity. It's about dropping the robot act.
That is the core message. Small talk is often dismissed as meaningless, but this deep dive shows it's actually the foundation of our relationships. It's a signaling mechanism. When you answer that question, you are saying, I am open to you. I trust you enough to share a tiny piece of my life.
It's the door to the relationship. And if you keep that door locked with one-word answers, you never get to the real stuff.
Precisely. And you miss the chance to find common ground. Maybe your colleague also loves carbonara or also hiked in the Blue Mountains. You'll never know if you just say, it was good.
So let's recap the big takeaways from our stack of sources to get everyone ready for next Monday.
Takeaway 1. Structure beats panic. Use the 3-step formula. Activity plus detail plus feeling. It turns a fact into a story.
Takeaway 2. Use hooks. Give your listeners something to grab onto. Don't say food, say spicy tacos. Don't say movie, say intense thriller.
Takeaway 3. Master the vocabulary of your reality. Know the difference between running around and taking it easy. And for grammar, stick to the past simple and the big 4. Went, had, saw, did.
And finally, the mindset. Connection over perfection. Say, I goed if you have to. Just get the ball over the net.
The ball has to go over the net.
This brings us to the end of our deep dive.
Yeah.
But we always like to leave you with something to chew on.
We do. As I was synthesizing all this, I realized something. We spend so much time worrying about how to say things, we forget to think about what we're actually saying.
What do you mean by that?
Think about the pattern of your answers over time. If every Monday for a year you tell your colleagues, I was running around, or I was so busy, or I barely had time to breathe, what brand are you building for yourself?
You become the busy person. The chaotic, overwhelmed person.
Exactly. Versus the person who regularly says, I took it easy, or I caught up with friends. Your weekend story is a weekly broadcast of your values. It tells people what you prioritize. Is it achievement and speed, or is it connection and rest?
That is profound. You are teaching people who you are one Monday morning at a time.
So which version of yourself do you want to introduce next week?
Something to think about while you're chilling or running around this weekend. Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive.
We'll see you next time.